Hey folks, Kilt-Man here. Kilt-Man at your fantastical service. How are we all? I hope we're doing very well. Let's get off the title track and let's get onto something a bit more apt for the occasion. Let's see what we can find. Let's see what we can find. Okay. Right. This little video is for all you people into fantasy. Swords and sorcery, black magic, necromancers, swashbuckling heroes, brawny, beefcake, muscle-bound warriors from bygone age. And why can't we hear that music? Right. Now, what it is, basically, you know I have a lot of movie books, tomes on genres, to hell and high water, westerns, thrillers, suspense, drama, horror, sci-fi. But what I didn't have at all, was a book, a compendium, an encyclopedia about fantasy movies, namely sword and sorcery films, because I've been doing a lot of talking about sword and sorcery of late on some of the videos, and with my chums who are also in isolation, but we've been communicating, we've been sending birds and hawks and sparrows with little letters and communications attached to their claws, their little claws, and we open them up. What do you think of Beastmaster? I think it's great. Attach it to claws. Off you go. No, he lives that. Useless fucking birds. But we were discussing, do you think this is fantasy? Is this sci-fi? Is it worth including in a top 10 list? What do you think of Dragon Slayer? What do you think of Krull? What do you think of Lucio Fulci's blood-soaked Conquest? And all those Italian things that came out in the 80s, the early 80s, the rip-offs of Mad Max, the rip-offs of Sword and the Sorcerer, and the rip-offs of Conan the Barbarian. And you know what? I adore fantasy. I adore Sword and Sorcery. And as I've been saying, I could not find a book that actually had anything like that. I went onto Amazon and I was putting all combinations in, omnibus of fantasy, and all you get tons of Game of Thrones omnibus, or you get all the Robert E. Howard Conan stories, which I've already got, stuff like that. And then someone on a Facebook page, which by the way is a Facebook group for fans of Sword and Sorcery, and he held up a book, an older gentleman, I will say, I don't know his name, and he went, "I finally got this, wow." And I thought, ooh, that looks like the kind of thing that I've been trying to find. So straight away, I was onto Amazon. You know me and Amazon, I get on like that. Well, my bank account doesn't get on that well with them, but that's another saga for another time, another period, another conflict. And I thought, I'll have that. And lo and behold, there it was. Now, it turned up today. It's here. I'm going to show it to you. What I expected was going to be a big coffee table tome, lavishly illustrated. No, that's not what I got. And initially I was like, oh shit, is that it? Should have done my homework. Anyway, I have, of course, spent a lot of time since its arrival to this point here, perusing it and enjoying it. And here it is. Ba, 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 ba. I mean, it's a pretty obvious title, isn't it? Cinema and Sorcery, the comprehensive guide to fantasy film, by Arnold T. Blumberg and Scott Allen Woodard. Because wood can be hard, can't it? My wood's always hard. And basically, it's completely unillustrated. But it does list a lot of movies. I think it says from, when are the ages from? It did say somewhere from 1925 to 2016, I think, is the time scale. And so there's a few films which haven't been mentioned, obviously, in later years. A few sequels, a few factoids, no additions. The book hasn't been revised, but what it does it'll go through all your favourites are here. I'll list some of the films in a minute, but it'll give you, like, for example, this Dark Crystal. So it's going to give you all, the credits, or a hell of a lot of them anyway. It says it's written by, these guys are obviously fantastical gamers. They've played Dungeons and Dragons in their time. They've both, in their little autobiographies and throughout the pages, will divulge details of their youth and how they discovered certain movies and what it meant to them. And they very definitely were heavily influenced in their fantasy role-playing games by the movies that they were watching during the 80s. And so, for example, they treat each film, like each chapter, will be sort of in segments, sort of game themed. So on the map, whereabouts would it be? So it'll tell you where this story, this saga is set. Our story so far. And that basically is just like, look, this is how the film starts. Introduce you to the main characters on what their quest, what their mission, what their plight is going to be. What the story is at its barest nutshell. Then it gives you alternate it kind of jumps around a bit. Alternate versions. So if that film's had cuts, had a different edit, had different sound scoring, had alternate endings, that sort of thing. Whether it was cut in the UK or cut in the US. And it tells you about the home video versions. Again, it's a little out of date, 2016. So some films which haven't, according to this, been released on home video have subsequently been released. It's magic, and that segment is basically talking about what kind of mystical practices are being used, whether it's sorcery, whether it's genuine black magic, whether it's ancient art, whether it's something from space, like the Force. Because I think Star Wars is pretty heavily referenced. I mean, people do say that Star Wars is sci-fi, it's fantasy, it's a space western. It's a lot of things, isn't it? The quest for meaning. Now, what is this? What's this bit about? That's like the overall theme. Like, for example, the Dark Crystal. See, warmer nights. I don't know if you saw what just fluttered by me there. Little moth. Because once again, foolishly, I have left the back door open. So fantastical critters are now coming in and assailing me in my own fortress. Right, the quest for meaning. Dark Crystal, like most fantasy films or novels, tackles a number of real-world issues, from the Tolkien-esque struggle between nature and technology, especially the advance of industrialism, to racism, classism, and intolerance. All but the Skeksis are linked to the environment in such a way as to be an extension of it. So it gives you like an overall theme, what the crux, what the metaphor, the allegory is for the story. Then it has a lengthy section, who goes there. Basically, that is telling you who all the cast and a lot of the crew are and what their resume was, and that goes fairly in depth for a lot of the people involved in these movies. The 6 Degrees of Sorcery. This is I thought this was a bit of a gimmick at first, because what this does, it tries to give like sort of influences and references. So, for example, it says here, this is the Dark Crystal still. The dying Master Mystic is akin to Yoda, and the sequence itself mirrors that of Yoda's passing in Luke's presence in Star Wars Return of the Jedi. It does, the way the Mystic fades away, almost like Yoda fading away and his robe just landing on the little bed in his little cave hut thing. But it kind of goes a little bit further than that. It'll then say like, well, this scene is very similar to one that you saw in this movie, and that'll be a film which came years afterwards, So it's a bit of a tenuous link, if you know what I mean. And at first I thought that's a bit stupid. But when you read through it, the writer's sense of humour and their opinions do come across. So I kind of like the way it's done. Then you get a section called Shattering the Illusion. So this goes into a lot more detail about the production, how things were changed, what anecdotes and trivia about it, and that can be quite in-depth as well. So you get a few pages on that. Then you get, which I love, you get a section on, it's called The Music of the Minstrels. In other words, it's about the soundtrack. And again, because this is a bit out of date, it's going through all the soundtrack releases, whether they're bootlegs, whether they were just a vinyl album presentation, and then its first CD run, and it give all the labels and the running times. and it's really, really good. It's but again, a lot of the CD releases or full soundtrack releases are not actually in here because the book was published before they came out. But up to a point, it's brilliant. It's a great little reference tool. Then you get a section called "The Saga Continues." So this talks about the impact of the film and its influence upon the rest of the genre, whether any sequels were going to be made, whether scripts existed, what happened to those scripts. Here's another section. See, this is where the gaming quality comes in. Then you have "Take Up Thy Sword," and this little section will focus on a particular weapon or device or magical amulet, ring, shield of steel or whatever, and it'll list down its powers. If you're going to make a game out of it, if you're going to involve it in a role-playing game, what the powers of it would actually be, how you could treat it. And that's, if you're into that sort of thing, that's quite a nice little gimmick as well, because you could incorporate these things. For example, in The Sword and the Sorcerer, Talon's three-bladed sword, two of which can be fired off at high velocity, over 50 yards. It lists all that and how you would use that in the game, which is kind of cool. I don't play D&D or any role-playing stuff, only in the bedroom. And I don't need no guidebook to help me with that one. There are no rules in our bedroom. The film's destiny. So this will talk about the overview of that movie, what it really meant, its impact upon the genre as well. And this year in gaming. So I've not really looked at this. This is like the final bit of each movie's saga, and it's not about the movie at all. It's just when that film came out, what was happening in the gaming industry at the time, and it does mention video games as well, obviously, and the original sort of role-playing board games and that sort of stuff. D&D, Traveller. What else was there? There was other stuff, wasn't there? So it's quite good. Now let's go into the actual films that they cover. A lot of them you will know, obviously. Some you think, what's that doing in there? You've got all the Harryhausen ones, the Sinbad movies. Then you go into things like Monty Python and the Holy Grail. It does have fantasy elements in it. It definitely does. Excalibur, The Beastmaster, Krull, The Last Unicorn, Conan the Barbarian. Funny enough, there's a huge section at the end which kind of gives an overview of many, many other films. All the key ones, and as many of them, get written about in depth. But this huge thing, which I think it's called A Concordance of Sword and Sorcery Movies, 1924 to 2015. So that gives like a very brief sort of resume of a lot of other films. And interestingly, there's a big chapter on Red Sonja, the Bridget Nielsen version. Well, the only version there is, isn't there? Which co-starred Arnold Schwarzenegger as Lord Calidor. And he was huge on the poster, much bigger than Red Sonja was. And the film was an absolute turd fest, wasn't it? It was bloody awful. But I read the chapter on it, and it seems to say, look, there's actually a lot of merit to it. It's cack-handed. The story's crap, the acting is terrible, but the scenery's fantastic. A lot of production design went into it, and it's not, it had potential to be great, but it failed at almost every level. But Conan the Destroyer, the sequel to Arnie's original Conan the Barbarian, that only gets a little brief mention in that segment. And I've said this many times before, although Conan the Barbarian is beyond any shadow of a doubt the better movie, the one that's more faithful to Robert E. Howard's initial creation of Conan, the Cimmerian Barbarian, is Conan the Destroyer. It's more fantastical. John Milius famously didn't want any sorcery or monsters or creatures or anything too fabulous in Conan. He focused on the rite of passage from a boy wanting revenge and his journey to manhood and becoming a hero and getting his vengeance. Death and destruction, the riddle of steel, not of myth and monsters and magic. They play a part, of course they do, but he actually toned all that back. But whereas Conan the Destroyer focuses on a hell of a lot of creatures and magic and mayhem and the occult and sorcery, and that is definitely more akin to what Robert E. Howard was writing. So I do have a big soft spot for Conan the Destroyer. It's not a good film. It isn't. Yes, it's the one with Grace Jones in it, yes. But it's very enjoyable at the same time. Very colourful. The Jason Momoa Conan the Barbarian, which is not in this book, by the way, which was Ted, of course. We all know that. And yet, Momoa looks the part. Momoa inhabits the character and looks like the Frazetta artwork. Frank Frazetta did the fantastic, fantasy artwork of Conan, muscle-bound, dark-haired, a brute with a neck like that, standing on a mountain of skulls, wielding the biggest, sharp-edged weapons you could ever fucking imagine. A double-headed axe, which even King Kong couldn't lift, but this guy does. And Momoa looks just like what Frazetta drew, just that the film was shit. And yet the film also has the occult, strange relics and, fabulous lost cities. And the scenery does look a lot like what Robert E. Howard would describe. So it's frustrating, isn't it? So much was going right for that film that it fell down when it came to the story and the dialogue and, the performances were just so crass. But we still want Arnie to come back to play King Conan, and by Crom, he could still do it. And Momoa, I'd welcome Momoa back. Just give him a better film to showcase it. Although now he's too smitten with, that guy from under the water, Aquaman. What other films have we got? We've obviously got Sword and the Sorcerer, my all-time favourite. You've got Krull, you've got Lou Ferrigno's Hercules, the Dark Crystal, as we said. What else? Conquest, the Lucio Fulci one. The Warrior and the Sorceress. Red Sonja. The Black Cauldron, Disney's animated one of Disney's darkest moments, with all the undead coming back to life. That seems actually cut down because it was too scary. Fabulous Elmer Bernstein score. It's a good movie. I like it a lot. Wizards of the Lost Kingdom, which I've never seen. Highlander is in here, of course. I did a video yesterday on Highlander and the swords and the epic headgear that Kurgan wears. Legend, Ridley Scott. Oh yes. Visually, it's a work of art. Sumptuous, ravishing to look at. The mood, the atmosphere is there. Tim Curry as darkness. Oh, it's phenomenal. There's a couple of missteps there. Tom Cruise really. I like Tom Cruise a lot, but playing this little boy. Well, he's not, is he? He was about 28 when he made that. But and you got the goblins and the one who fakes being a goblin. But you've got Meg Mucklebones as well, and Rob Bottin's awesome makeup. And Miss Meg, do you intend to eat me? Oh, indeed I do. Fantastic stuff, and a great Jerry Goldsmith score as well. We won't talk about the Tangerine Dream score. Labyrinth, Bowie. Weirdly enough, and I'm surprised to see it, although really I shouldn't be, is the epic Big Trouble in Little China. John Carpenter, Kurt Russell, Jack Burton, the Pork Chop Express. It is fantasy. It is. It's got so many things thrown into it. Martial arts, wushu, fighting on wires, Chinese mysticism. You've got everything in there. It is awesome. One of my favourite Carpenter movies. The Barbarians, The Princess Bride. Now, wetting my whistle for a second, folks. If you've got one, chug along. Princess Bride. Was it Rob Reiner? It is, isn't it? Based on William Goldman's book. Everyone loves this. It's a cult film. Peter Falk's in there as well. Mandy Patinkin. And, I don't see it. I think it's too whimsical. It's too fake. And there's a good sword fight in it. Carrie Elwes and what the hell is the other guy's name? I did just say it, didn't I? Mandy Patinkin, yeah. Inigo Montoya. But no, I'm not smitten with it at all. Maybe I need to go back and revisit it. But I've got it, it's there. What else have we got? There's quite a lot on that actually. Deathstalker and the Deathstalker series. Willow. Got a story about Willow. And our little friend there. Oh my god, what's his bloody name? Warwick Davis. I can't believe I've got during lockdown, every single damn day, you've got the afternoon. Doesn't matter what day of the week it is, it's all blurred into one. You've got nothing but fucking quiz shows. You've got The Chase. You've got, oh god, Tipping Point. And you've got bloody Warwick Davis doing this god awful fucking quiz show called Tenable. I love Warwick Davis. I've met Warwick Davis. The story about him is, I used to go to, I've said it before, me and my mate, Lee Van Keith, he looks like Lee Van Cleef, but his name's Keith, so he's Lee Van Keith. We used to have a business together, making action figure stands. And we used to go down all the memorabilia markets up and down the country, and your comic cons and all that. Now, I remember, because we used to take it in turns, like, okay, we sold a bit, right, now I'm going to walk around, and we'd spend all our fucking profits, which is why our business failed dismally. So I'd go around, and I'd be at we had a stall which measured probably no bigger than what you can see in the frame here right now. But there was an epic long stall selling nothing but DVDs. There was no Blu-rays at the time, it was all DVDs. And I was going through all these stuff, I went, oh god. And I was trying to get closer. I'll have to enact this. I was like leaning over this thing like that. And there was all people crowding around, and I couldn't get to this box. I was like, what the fuck? So I moved in even more. Bang! Bang! You've guessed it, haven't you? Who was stood in front of me? Warwick Davis. And do you know what he had in his hand? My plums. No. He had a copy of Willow, which had finally come out on American DVD, collector's edition of Willow. And he was trying to pay for it. And I just thought, this is no word of a lie. I thought, obviously he was there doing a signing, and he must have just come out and found his own bloody film. And I went, what? And the whole table was there, festooned with movies and a big crowd of people. And the guy who run the stall, he was asking for the money off Warwick. I went, you can't charge him for that. It's his fucking movie. He's the star of it. See on the cover there, that's him. And and he just laughed it off. And Warwick Davis, just with that lovely smile of his, he just laughed as well and still paid for it. I can't believe it. And I missed a trick there. I should have got a copy and got him to sign it, but I didn't. Anyway. So that was that little anecdote for you there. Little fantastical anecdote. By the way, I don't like the film Willow either. There's me saying a big fantasy buff, and I've slammed a few of them already. Princess Bride and Willow. What am I saying? Barbarian Queen 2, The Empress Strikes Back. Oh, I think we can dispense with that. There's a quote here somewhere. What is it now? She's wild, she's sexy, she's the Barbarian Queen. I wonder who played it. Let's have a look. Lana Clarkson, or Lena Clarkson, Army of Darkness, Evil Dead 3, which should have been called The Medieval Dead. There was a title, God-given title for you, The Medieval Dead, and they still went and fucked it up and just called it Army of Darkness. And let's have a look, there should be a massive section on alternate versions. Where is it now? Alternate versions, because there's so many different versions of that, as you know. Yeah, there's quite a big section on it. Dragonheart, Sean Connery doing the voice of the dragon. Oh man. Yeah, I like that. The film Dungeons and Dragons, that was shit, wasn't it? And you've got all the Lord of the Rings movies. Now, I shouldn't be surprised that they're in there, but it was kind of like, once I discovered that the first one was in, I thought, well, that's the rest of the book taken up there, isn't it? But of course, they perhaps are the pinnacle of sword and sorcery and high fantasy. Everything's there. Tolkien was the godfather of all this stuff, so it's not a surprise, is it? But I've not read too much about. I've got every book going for Lord of the Rings, the movies, that is, the art of books, the making of books, the weapons, the tribes, the armour, tons and tons and tons of books. I spent thousands on that series. A film called Versus, which I've never heard of. It's R-rated, could be interesting. I'll look into that. Pirates of the Caribbean is in there. Again, you can see why. Now here's one that I'm looking around because I thought I brought the movie in as well, because I wanted to talk about this. Solomon Kane. Sorry, I'm not going to show you much because there is no imagery in it at all whatsoever. Solomon Kane by Michael J. Bassett. Now, those of you who remember me from AV Forums may remember that me and another colleague got a chance to interview Michael J. Bassett, the director of Solomon Kane, which starred Dorset born. Is it Dorset or Worcestershire? Where the hell is it from? Somerset, wherever. And but James Purefoy plays Solomon Kane. Solomon Kane was written by Robert E. Howard. This is a later hero he created after Kull the Conqueror, and then Conan the Barbarian, and then it was Solomon Kane. A swashbuckling pirate, a bloodthirsty barbarian bastard, black-hearted, who then gets cursed and has to change his ways and takes to a Puritan life, following God and punishing evil, around that he sees around the world to try to redeem his soul. Michael J. Bassett did this, invited a couple of us to go and watch an early screening, which we before the film had been released, and we saw the early screening. We then had dinner with the guy, went out to a local hostelry, had a great big meal there, and then we went back to film an interview with him, which lasted hours. And they're all on AV Forums somewhere. And at the time, because we'd just seen this movie and we were sitting with him, I didn't have the heart to say to him that, you know what, your film was okay, but there's a lot of cliches and shit that goes along with it. Stop using rain, for God's sake. Michael J. Bassett, his previous film, his previous two movies, both had rain. They were horror movies, had rain, incessant rain. And he said the reason why I use rain like this is it gives you something visually interesting. I get his point for the viewer to look at. It could be just a scene of two people talking, but the rain between you and them creates intrigue and mystery and action, even on a static scene. I get you, but bloody hell, you use rain non-stop, absolutely non-stop. When it's just rain, it won't stop raining outside, and you're like, I'm fucking miserable. I'm afraid that was the effect the film had, despite all the great action and the great monsters and creatures, and the big build-up to big finale. And a bit like Sword and the Sorcerer and Conan, he gets crucified and survives it. But, I have since gone back and rewatched it and really enjoyed it for what it was. And because I forgot all about it, the film didn't get much of a release, but in the UK it did. In America, people had to wait a good 2 years, I think, before the film actually saw the light of day over there. And even then, it didn't get much ballyhoo, any fanfare, so no one even knew about it. But now I've seen it in here, I've gone upstairs and I've dug the film out, and I'm going to rewatch it. I'm playing the music to it now, actually, to Solomon Kane, and by Klaus Badelt, a Hans Zimmer, minion. But he's done some good stuff as well. I like. So I'm going to watch the film again and give it a full, proper review for you, because I'm in a fantasy sort of mode at the moment, and and it was great to meet Michael Bassett, because he was an interesting guy, and we talked a lot about the sword fighting and the stunt work, and how much James Purefoy, who you also saw in Ironclad, he's great in Ironclad as well. The guy could swing a sword. The guy was really good, and see, the next time I watched Solomon Kane, I did appreciate it a hell of a lot more. I still wished it stopped fucking raining, at least for 5 bloody seconds. But now I want to look back, because I've read the chapter on it, and they seem to big it up quite a lot. So, I take other people's opinions on board. And the great thing about being a movie buff, a movie fanatic, is that your opinions can evolve over time. I remember Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds came out. First time I saw it, I despised it because he didn't show you anything. And then I watched it again, and I reviewed it on 2 separate occasions, again for AV Forums, and my opinions did a complete 180, and I fell in love with it because it didn't do what I initially thought it should do, because I then got the point of the story. So, I'm not saying that there's going to be any great shakes with Solomon Kane, any great thematic material and subtext which I missed, although there might be. But sometimes you get a better feeling, a better vibe from a film years down the line, more of an understanding for it. So folks, Solomon Kane is coming up, along with loads of other stuff. So, if you're into this sort of thing, that's a good book to get. Deceptively good. I thought when I first got it, I thought, this is for gamers, this is all it's for. Not much of a review, but actually, if you read the whole chapter on his film, you get a lot of stuff in there, a lot of opinion, a lot of trivia, a lot of anecdotes, a lot of facts and figures. It's good, it's well worth it. Cinema and Sorcery. Go get it, folks. In the meantime and in between time, remember, every day's a new adventure. So quest on, folks, but keep it kilted, keep it Celtic, and I'm going to see you all later. Just not when it's raining, though, okay?